Hi, my name is Rochelle, and you're listening to BoxBox F1 Pod, or watching, because I am once again doing a video podcast and seeing where this journey takes me. Anyways, today we're reviewing the Miami Grand Prix, which, like Miami, was such a vibe. Way over the top, and like the race itself sort of felt anticlimactic in comparison, but actually when you dig into it, there were some incredible performances, and more importantly, it was low-key exceptional in that there were like no yellow flags, no red flags, 0 incidents, and only like 1 little penalty. Like, that's a big well done to everyone involved, the drivers, the teams, and as much as it pains me to say, the stews and the FIA also get a very, very small clap from me. The only person, however, that's not getting a thumbs up from me this weekend is whoever came up with, approved, and wrote the intros that we did during the pre-race ceremony. That should have been like red flag from the start. Whoever signed off on it. I will get into all of that, including the race and everything that went down during the actual Grand Prix, which is what matters and why we're here. But before we get into that, it's time for the digital warm-up. Lap 1. Celebrity stuff. I don't know if you've noticed, but there were a couple of celebrities spotted around the paddock over the weekend. And by a couple, I think there might have been more celebrities over the weekend than there were at the Met Gala. I'm gonna run through a list of celebs and then like just pause on a couple that I really had some standout moments that I want to discuss. So Jeff Bezos was at the McLaren garage, which they did not show. They mentioned him on the broadcast. They're like, oh, Jeff Bezos on the pit wall, but they didn't show him. So I thought it was like a joke or something. Jeff Bezos was there with his weird looking girlfriend, and Elon Musk was there with his child, whose name I will not attempt to pronounce, was at the Red Bull garage. And honestly, of all the celebrities that attended, his presence makes the most sense. He's a weirdo. Oh, weird. Okay, so him and Mohammed, the president of the FIA, he posted a picture of him and Elon talking and captioned it, just discussing on how to limit online bullying. Elon Musk is talking to the FIA president about decreasing online bullying. Do they know that Elon Musk bullies online? Seems like an odd subject for them to cover. There's probably like racy stuff they could talk about and like engines. Anyway, there was also Lindsey Vonn, the Olympic skier, Patrick Mahomes, will.i.am, who we'll get into, Martin Garrix, shout out Martin, Shakira. That's so embarrassing. I can't believe I did that. Okay, Queen Latifah, DJ Khaled was there, and this is a great one. Okay, so I guess DJ Khaled is like partnered with Boss, or is like a Boss rep or something, like Hugo Boss, the brand. And I guess Hugo Boss also sponsors Aston Martin. So Lance Stroll and DJ Khaled like collaborated. And like, the first initial picture I saw of them together was already hilarious as they're like walking through the garage, and just like, I don't know why Lance with DJ Khaled makes me laugh, but it does. But then there was like a whole video of Lance rocking up to DJ Khaled's house, and he like gets out of the car and he just shouts into the abyss, "Yo, Khaled, let's roll." Anyway, DJ Khaled like greets him, they like chill a bit inside, and I guess he looks out the window and he's like at the Aston Martin SUV that Lance drove over, and is like, "Is that what you're racing in?" And Lance was like, no, that's just what we're taking to get to the track. And DJ Khaled is like, "And then we'll get in a race car?" And Lance is like, "I'll see what I can do." But like, let's be honest, is DJ Khaled going to fit into a race car? Sorry, Lawrence isn't fitting in a race car. Many people aren't fitting in a race car, although Zach Brown did shove himself into a McLaren at some point. So anything is possible. Their like drive there is so weird. DJ Khaled just shouts, right? Like out loud. And he's just like, "Let the track know we're coming." And then Lance is a huge DJ Khaled fan, apparently. Every time I say DJ Khaled, it sounds less and less like an actual word. But anyway, so Lance is apparently like a huge fan, and he was full on fangirling in the car. And at one point, he just shouts, "Bring out the lobster!" I'm not a big enough DJ Khaled fan to know what the lobster is referenced to, but it made DJ Khaled laugh. And then when they got out of the car, DJ Khaled looks directly in the camera and goes, "Lance is my new best friend." I died, but also I'm starting to feel that way too, DJ Khaled. I also feel like Lance should be my new best friend, so I get it. Other people at the track, Vin Diesel, because they're promoting Fast and Furious 10, and he refused to get into a fast lap because he said he only trusts himself to drive. Vin Diesel's weird. He's a weird guy. Michelle Rodriguez was also there, and she is so cool. Like, honestly, so cool. She did a hot lap with Lando, and, I mean, we already know she's a badass, but, like, she was so chill. It was like she was going through a school zone. Like, chill, no issues, like just chatting with Lando about all things cars. Lando asked her if she does her own stunts, and she said all of my stunts except for the car ones, which I guess is like 90% of Fast and Furious, but they're not like allowed to do those themselves. She's so relaxed in this car that even though she doesn't do her own stunts, she's clearly very comfortable in the front seat of a car going 200 miles an hour. I don't think they were going 200, but fast. And it's also such a hilarious contrast to the Jimmy Butler fast lap that will be played forever until for all of eternity. Like, we're never not watching that again. But he was like shitting his pants, and she like got out of the car and was like, "It was pee your pants cool," but she didn't actually pee her pants. And it was really funny to see her next to Lando, and she did joke that she was like, he drives so fast because his prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. And he does look like such a kid next to her, especially when he's got that little beard thing that he still thinks is a full beard and is like gonna keep on his chin forever, apparently. Makes him look even tweenier. But she did make a joke that his prefrontal cortex wasn't fully developed, and that's why he can take so many risks. But then she was like, no, he's like really good at his job. That was really, really cool. And I do think it's funny though that like as chill as she was, Michelle Rodriguez still recognized how good Lando is at driving, which obviously, but I just think it's funny because in any other situation, Michelle Rodriguez would literally eat Lando alive. But here, she was like, game recognizes game. This guy's cool. But he does look like a tween. Other people, Ludacris was there because he's obviously also in Fast and Furious. The Williams sisters, Serena and Venus. LL Cool J, who we will discuss. He was doing the pre-race introductions. Oh, God. The rapper IDK. He had a really cool Landman outfit on, by the way. His outfit was really dope. But he got stopped by Martin Brundle on the track. And my favorite part was Brundle like ending the conversation, goes, "Nice to meet you, IDK." And then like pregnant pause and goes, "But it's actually Jason, right? Your name's not really IDK, correct?" Tom Cruise was obviously also there, and he looks worse and worse each time I see him, but that's specific to his face. His actual like energy and ability to like exist is that of like a 25-year-old. He blows my mind every time I see him that he's even 60. But he did a pit stop with Mercedes, and he finished it, and I couldn't fully understand what he said. The microphone wasn't fully on him, but it sounded like, "That's it?" Which is such a Tom Cruise thing to say. The Jonas Brothers were there in the Alpine garage. They hung out with Pierre, which is like so much for me to personally handle. I love the Jonas Brothers. Joe and Pierre in one room. That's a lot of charisma just like bouncing off the walls. That's like a lot. But that was exciting for me to see, even though they're just as much of a newbie as every other celeb. But I have my sweet spot. ASAP Rocky hung out with Lewis, duh. But he also visited the Ferrari garage, and I thought it was really funny. So he was like inspecting the helmet, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And then he like points to the visor and goes, this is for the bugs, right? And they were like, yeah. And honestly, never in my life did it cross my mind that the visor was for the bugs, even though it makes perfect sense. But like never have I looked at a visor and been like, this is to protect the drivers from the bugs, from the sunlight, which I guess it does both. But like the bugs never crossed my mind, but it's actually really gross. They must eat a lot of bugs if they're not wearing a helmet. Blech. Anyway, also there was Roger Federer, sorry. Also there was Roger Federer, and it was funny. He got accosted by Sir Jackie Stewart, who was trying to pull him for an interview with Brundle. Brundle's like, oh, I want to talk to Roger, and Sir Jackie Stewart was like, I got you, and then just like beeline through like a bunch of security guards who are literally body blocking like 4'11" Sir Jackie Stewart in his like tartan pants and like tartan beret, and he gives zero fucks. Like he's still trying to like go around, and that's the benefit of being small but mighty. He's like weeding his way through the security guards, and then George appears out of nowhere. I think he was trying to say hi to Roger because they're friends now, because he posts a picture with him and Roger every opportunity he gets. But Jackie Stewart didn't care. He's pushing George away, he's pushing the guards away. Finally he gets to Roger, and he does score a quick interview with Brundle with Roger, so good for him. In addition to Roger Federer, there was also James Marsden, who was incorrectly labeled Roger Federer when the camera caught him mid-race, just like on the side of the track. It was honestly a hilarious picture because he looks very sheepish and like bewildered that the camera has found him. I don't know if he was allowed to be there, like on the side of the track, like sticking his phone through the fence to try to get a good video. But the fact that he was labeled as Roger Federer, great tennis player, was amusing. By the way, James Marsden is literally everywhere. I think I mentioned this last time. I talked about him doing the basketball, right? Yeah. He literally is popping up everywhere I look. How does he have time? Next, lap 2 Miami media. So the drivers did a lot of media in Miami. Some might argue too much, because I, in fact, distinctly only remember a couple of things, and everything else was just like a whirlwind that just kept happening and happening. So I will talk about the two things I remember very, very well. One favorite of mine was Red Bull sent their team to race on like these little speedboat things, or like a jet ski. Shows how much I know about water sports. But anyways, part of the marketing stuff was Yuki and Daniel were on a boat together. And right before Daniel told the camera that Yuki's actually terrified of the water and of sharks. So naturally, Daniel was like, I'm going to push him in. Plan formed. And so as they're on the boat, Daniel casually goes, oh my God, do you see that thing over there? And Yuki turns around, and Daniel's like, oh no, you have to stand up a little. Like, look at it from this way. Yuki stands up, and Daniel jumps into the water, pushing him in. And it was very amusing. Yuki was okay. Like, he laughed it off, but he was like panicky, but he was okay. But I thought it was kind of sweet that Daniel went in with him and then just shove him in and laugh at him from the boat. Which I think he did because Yuki was actually nervous. So that was very cute. But anyway, it was very funny. Yuki and Daniel is a great combo that I never thought I needed, but I actually love. Also, there was a rumor that Brad Pitt was going to be driving at Silverstone along with the rest of the drivers and entered as like an 11th team. That rumor has been put to bed. He will be at Silverstone, but he will be driving like an F2, F3 car, not a full-on F1 car, and it will be not during a live session. Also, apparently Mercedes is helping fit like a camera onto the car, so it's going to be filmed in the same way that like Top Gun was filmed. But that's the extent of it, and he will not be driving with F1 drivers. Also, some team principal goss. Franz Tost is leaving F1. What was interesting, last week Franz Tost said that he doesn't trust his engineers, and when he was asked about it this week, he said that he fired the one person he didn't trust, and he trusts everyone else that's left. Given how the car is performing, I'm not sure that's wise, but I love that he just admitted that. He's like, I don't trust my engineers, and then just got rid of them. Speaking of pot stirring, though, Laurent Rossi, the CEO of Alpine, went ham in the media this week. He said It is disappointing. It is really bad. This year has started with a defective performance. It is a lot, and it is evident. Our position in the classification is not worthy of the resources that we spend, and we are quite far away from the final goal of this season. I am noticing not only an evident lack of performance and rigor at work, but also a potential state of mind that is not up to past standards of this team. I did not like the first Grand Prix because there was a lot, sorry to say it, dilettantism or amateurism, choose the word that sounds best, which led to a result that was not correct, that was mediocre, bad. And the last race in Baku was similar to the one in Bahrain. That is not acceptable. You are allowed to make mistakes. It is a basic principle. You learn from them, but you do need to learn. And when you make the same mistake twice, it means you haven't learned and you're not taking responsibility. That is not acceptable. Shots fired. That is an aggressive public statement from the CEO. Like, I can see him saying that to people behind the scenes, but to tell the media that, he is pissed. Still trying to figure out if he's more pissed at the drivers or the engineers or both, like whose performance is pissing him off, but still. Oh, I almost forgot. So Max and Checo did a podcast as part of Miami promo, and Max was asked who he met in America that he's never met before, and without pause, Max looks directly at the guy and says, Chuck Leclerc. And him and Checo are like low-key dying, and the interviewers have no idea what he's talking about. They were like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Like, you've never met him before? As if Chuck Leclerc is a real American that Max met while he was in Miami last time. Like, guys. Another interviewer, maybe it was like the same one and I just saw a different clip, but the guys asked Max if he owned the Lion, and Max was like, huh? And then he's like, oh, yeah, during that driver gift thing, what's that thing called? He means Secret Santa, but okay. He said, I adopted a lion for Mick Schumacher in his name. And the interviewers were like, right, so you owned the lion and you gave it away. And Max was like, no, I adopted a lion in someone else's name. The lion is in the wild. He doesn't belong to anyone. And the guys were like, right, but you can visit the lion, right? And he was like, I guess. And he was like, so you owned a lion and gave it away. And Max looks bewildered at like this entire exchange. It feels very straightforward what he's saying. Like, people can name a star. That doesn't mean they own the star. Anyway, Max is so frequently lost in translation with some people that I just don't understand why. He's so straight to the point and like clear, I feel like, in everything he says, and yet people are confused by him. Anyway, speaking of things that are lost in translation, lap 3, the pre-race ceremony. Guys, when I tell you that I was watching this alone and still like sinking in my seat like this, like trying to like shield myself from the embarrassment that was happening on screen. As a marketing copywriter, I apologize for copywriters. As an American, I apologize for America. Because this was like the most American thing I've ever seen in my life, and I've spent 30 years here. And anyway, I will go through every single one and appropriately shit on each one. But first, I do want to give credit where credit is due. Although it was completely unnecessary, I did enjoy the 30-piece orchestra. will.i.am was randomly conducting it. I understand that he composed it, but does he actually know how to conduct? Or was he just waving his arms? Serious questions. Also, his little rant during the post-race show when he was asked if he already knew how to conduct, and instead he answered with a very long rant about STEM and about how he composed a song on Mars or something, was just so weird. I don't think we ever got an actual answer if he knows how to conduct. Anyway, I will also give it to LL Cool J. His pronunciation of all the names was pretty decent, and he got all the names right, which was everyone's biggest concern with this whole situation. And also, he really did do the best with what he got. It's just like, why the fuck did he get that? Why was that what he received? And so that is a pretty good segue into everything I hated, which was pretty much everything else. The copy just pained my soul. Okay, first up, our first driver is a local boy from right here in Miami. Our local boy done good. Give it up for Logan Sargent. And poor Logan Sargent, I guess, assumed that he was supposed to talk, or I guess LL Cool J shoved the mic in his mouth, so he just goes, "What up, America? Let's bring the energy." And then it was just silent. And I don't know if it was the broadcast, but it felt like it was silent. It was very awkward, and I felt very bad for Logan, who's just like, sweet little kid from Florida trying to hype things up. The next introduction was, next up, a multiple champion before arriving in Formula One. He's a new sensation, Nick DeVries, who like literally swerves around LL Cool J and gives like a random thumbs up in his direction and just like avoids the whole situation like a terrible car crash. Then it's the bad boy turned good, the Viking racer from Denmark, Kevin Magnussen. Okay. Alex's was, I don't even remember what Alex's was, but he just walked up like looking like he was really trying not to laugh. Like he looked uncomfortable. And then the most horrifying thing ever came. He might be small in stature, but he's a mighty racer. It's the fearless Japanese F1 superstar, Yuki Tsunoda. What did Yuki do to deserve this? Like, small and fearless aren't even opposite, so it's not even, like, good copy. And will people ever stop pointing out that Yuki is short? Like, we get it. He's small. There's other stuff you can say about him. And then he's the only racer in F1 history. He's the only Chinese racer in F1 history, and now he's one of the most exciting drivers on the grid. It's Zhou Guanyu. Okay. And then a French racer with a French team who is a fan favorite and a race winner. It's Pierre Gasly. And I don't know if he was trying to say like Daniel or if he was just trying to sound French, but he really did do like Gasly. And then this was bad. This was actually my least favorite one. But childhood friends with Pierre Gasly turned rivals turned teammates. It's Esteban Ocon. What did Esteban do to deserve this intro? Like, is his relationship to Pierre the only thing we can think of to talk about? He's also a race winner. Why didn't we mention that? Poor Esty Bestie, like, resorted to this, like, weird frenemy thing that he has with Pierre that he didn't even choose for himself. Then he's a fun-loving driver with multiple Grand Prix wins and incredible one-lap pace. It's Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, you were really fast for a lap, Valtteri. Thumbs up. Australia's rookie boy wonder racing for McLaren. He's young and hungry to be a champion. It's Oscar Piastri. And then out comes like tiny little Oscar. And then the fan favorite is known as the Hulk for his speed and aggressive driving. It's Nico Hulkenberg. That's not why Nico is known as the Hulk. He's known as the Hulk because his name is Nico Hulkenberg. Next up, a young British talent at McLaren and one of the most exciting to break into F1. It's Lando Norris. And then Lando like runs out and he does it in a way that I thought he was trying to walk out all cool, but then I realized he's trying to dodge all the smoke so he doesn't like suffocate. I think he hated it. And then this one takes me out every time. Now, this guy came back from 2 broken wrists at the start of the season and drove through the pain to score points. He's a Canadian carrying the hopes of his nation. It's Lance Stroll. He's carrying the hopes of his nation? What? Another British hotshot. He's racing for Mercedes and is already highly regarded as the future F1 champ in the making. It's George Russell. Okay. From the home of the grandest Grand Prix of them all, Monaco, he adds in like parentheses as if we don't know what he's talking about. This driver fought for the championship in 2022. It's Charles Leclerc. Is this really like the best time to remind Charles of what he failed at last year? There's so many other things you could say about Charles. The next one is the Spanish superstar had his first win in 2022, driving for Ferrari, and he's famous as a smooth operator on track. It's Carlos Sainz. To be fair, mentioning the smooth operator thing was a good move, but none of the rest of it was. He's the most successful driver in the history of the sport. He's a 7-time world champion. He's a game changer and a change maker. He's royalty. Sir Lewis Hamilton. Should I do this for a living? Lewis got a hug, and Lewis was very into this. Like, he enjoyed all of it. This 2-time world champion is in the form of his life. On the front row of the grid with his new team, Aston Martin, it's Fernando Alonso. Okay, he is in the form of his life, to be fair. He is a Mexican multiple race winner. He is gunning for that title. Viva la Mexico, Sergio Perez. Okay. And finally, the 2-time world champion and the current championship leader. He's the man everyone has to beat, and the man that looks unstoppable. Turn it up for Max Verstappen. This is fun. I get why LL agreed to do it. But LL Cool J pulled Max to the side before he could walk off like everyone else, and he's like, "Hey, so Max, I just told everyone you were unstoppable. Did I lie? Was it true?" And Max is like, "Well, I'm just gonna go out there and have a good day." And LL Cool J was like, "No, you have a great day." Max was like, "Okay." I can't. As for how the drivers felt about it, they had varying reactions. Actually, no, they didn't. They basically universally hated it. George said, "I guess it's the American way of doing things in sport. Personally, it's probably not for me." Lewis said, "They're trying new things. They're trying to improve the show, and I'm in full support of it," which honestly, that checks out. That they looked like he was in full support of it. And then Lando said, Lando said, "None of the drivers like it, but it's not for us at the end." Sounds like a thing that Lando would say. I hate this, but Max said in the post-race interview that it depends on the personality, and for him, personally, it doesn't fit his personality because he doesn't like that much attention. And Max said he personally wouldn't necessarily like to see it very often. Also, he said it detracts from prep time and talking to his engineers, but he does understand the entertainment value. I don't think he actually understands entertainment value, but he said it. Checo said that it's okay as long as it didn't happen too often, and that he thinks that they should also respect the driver's need to prep for the race. Fernando, also not a fan, especially right before the race. He actually did have great ideas. He said that if they have to do it, they should replace it something else in the weekend with it. So like the driver's parade, they could probably like combine it in some way. This is me now talking. They could probably combine the driver's parade and these like weird intros and make it some sort of more cohesive thing. And then the drivers are less annoyed that it's taking away from their time. Still embarrassing though. I don't think they actually want this to happen, but it might be a middle ground. The one interesting thing that Fernando said about it is that he disagreed with Max and Checo in that it should happen as little as possible. He thinks if it happens once, it should happen at every race because he doesn't think American fans are any better than like Italian fans or Spanish fans or Japanese fans. As my friend put it, Fernando is correct. American fans are worse, but that's not what Fernando meant, although maybe he was thinking it. But anyway, I agree with everyone. Like, it should definitely not be right before the race if it has to happen, because I'm sure it's like jarring to like do that and then sit in a car. Also, side note, I do have a theory about how to spot which drivers enjoyed this and which ones did not, based on how many thumbs up they gave during their walk out. The drivers that gave more thumbs up hated it. Like Lewis, 0 thumbs up. Some drivers were just like didn't know what to do with themselves. So I think that's good to go back and watch who thumbs up the most. All right, lap 4, paddock fits. So Miami brings something out in people that they think they need to look ridiculous. Like, it's all satin, linen, palm trees, weird colors. Like, everyone feels like they need to do something here. The first one I'm going to talk about is Charles, who showed up on Sunday with like these blue and white striped jeans, I guess, but they're like horizontal stripes, so he looks like a Israeli candy cane. I don't know. And it's got like a bit of a faded wash to them, and he wore like a white t-shirt and like this baby blue jacket that's like baseball style color. And it's from his favorite designer who I never know how to pronounce, Nihamis. He wears them like all the time. But apparently Fred Vasseur saw it and just said Carnival. Which, you know, I would like fashion commentary from Fred every weekend. If I could get Fred for a Paddock Fit lap, for the Paddock Fit lap, that would be everything. Also, Charles did get some banter from the guys. Pierre, Max, and Lando were making fun of his pants before the parade. And Lando was like, did you make those? And Charles was like, yeah. And Max immediately stopped smiling and started looking back and forth from like Lando and Charles, being like, wait, did he actually make them? Like, he felt bad that he was laughing. And he was like, oh, he didn't make them. That was a joke. Okay. And then he like felt comfortable to laugh again. It's cute. Nico Hulkenberg. You know that how he said he's called the Hulk because he's so aggressive on track? He's aggressive in his clothes. He exclusively dressed in palm trees. One day he wore this like hot pink button up and like short set that's covered in palm trees. And another day he wore like a beige set also covered in palm trees. At least Nico's fits look breathable and just make sense like functionally, but that's a lot of fucking palm trees. Another day he didn't dress in palm trees, but he wore head to toe from the brand Palm Angels, and it just said palm everywhere. So like no palm trees, but like still had the word palm on it. And also his helmet was covered in palm trees. Nico loves Miami trees. It's like his number one thing. All right, Yuki. Okay, so he is still wearing AlphaTauri, and I swear they're like going way more fun this year. Like, I don't think they had these options before, but he's wearing what looks like a Versace set, but obviously it's not. It's AlphaTauri, and it's like hot pink and purple, like ombre, and I guess supposed to be like a sunset thing. And there's the Miami skyline at the bottom of the shirt. But my favorite part of this entire outfit is that there was a video of him walking through the paddock. The shirt's unbuttoned. You can see his little Tom Ford boxers peeking out. He has a backwards cap on that matches the set. He's wearing sunglasses and he's sipping on a little espresso cup. And he just looks like such a fuckboy, and I love it. Because Yuki's not a fuckboy, but he looks it, and that's great. I just love that for him. Like, all the confidence. He's just like dripping in confidence. Love it. Love Yuki this year. Lewis wore a lot of outfits. He wore this like denim Louis Vuitton set that sparkled and looked hot. Someone posted Lewis doesn't sweat, he sparkles, which okay. He wore this like black sparkly, like not sparkly, like shiny jumpsuit thing. He looked like an Elvis impersonator dressed as a tire blanket. Like, I critique his outfits a lot, but I still appreciate them. I don't get this at all. Like, what is happening? My favorite Lewis outfit of the weekend, though, was actually a matching thing he did with George for Tommy Hilfiger, who sponsors Mercedes. George is wearing like a baseball-inspired shirt that says Tommy and his racing number, and everything's red, white, and blue, obviously. Tommy doesn't acknowledge other colors. And he's wearing these like slim blue pants that look like the pants he usually wears. And then Lewis is wearing like a rugby style shirt that's like red, white, and blue with the Mercedes logo. And he has like these really, really cool cream track pants on with like a blue stripe down the side, which I actually really want. And what I love about this is that Tommy Hilfiger clearly created these outfits for them, but they so fit their styles. Like, it's so natural and organic on them that I just like love it a lot. And I actually want to own Lewis's entire outfit. It's really cool. And then last but not least, Guan Yu. One outfit to like tie things over. He wore a light gray silk Dior set with like the button-up shirt and shorts, and just like he just looks so cool, but like not over the top. There are no palm trees, there are no neon colors, but it still like fits the Miami vibe. I love it. I love Guan Yu and how effortless he is. He's just like, he did it without doing it, you know? Anyway, that concludes our digital warm-up. On to the race rhyme. Welcome to the 305, where the vibe is anything but shut up and drive. In a sea of drivers wearing linen, palm trees, and colors so bright, we're catching glimpses of celebs and influencers left and right. Sometimes it's James Marsden moonlighting as Roger Federer, and other times it's TikTok stars getting rides in an Alfa Romero or whatever. Before we can race though, there's one more thing America must spoil. LL Cool J will introduce every driver with words so cringe it'll make you recoil. If someone doesn't know who these drivers were before this, now they can report that Esteban and Pierre are frenemies, and Yuki Tsunoda is very short. Charles tried and failed to become champion last year, and now I guess he just exists. And Lance is carrying the hopes of his nation on his broken wrists. Now to the race. If anyone in Miami gives a fuck, we've got mixed starting grid due to a small crash started by Chuck. Checo's on pole, followed by Fernando and Carlos. It's lights out, and away we vamonos. Way back in P9 is Max, but he doesn't seem to care. To everyone in front of him, sorrows, prayers. In just 15 laps, that includes a 2-1 overtake, Max settles into P2. And since Checo is on mediums, it isn't long before he must pit for tires that are new. Miraculously, there were no incidents and 0 flags this entire race, but teams like McLaren and Ferrari lacked literally any pace. Fernando, however, is making his way downtown, driving fast, faces past, and he's podium bound. He even has some time for engineering, and to watch Lance's race down from the ground. When Max finally pits, he needs to chase down Checo and do the improbable. Checo puts up a good fight, but in the end, I guess LL was right. Max is unstoppable. Our go-to trio is back on the podium, and Fernando busts a little jig. He even passes down the champagne so the engineers could have a swig. Next up is Imola, and who knows how our drivers will fare. To the Tifosi, however, sorrows, prayers. Okay, on to analysis. So, quali was very random. Q1 was literally any man's game. The driver at risk that they have at the bottom of the screen was literally changing every couple of minutes. It seemed so close literally the entire time. Pardon me. Somehow Lance got out in Q1, though he himself wasn't actually surprised. He said that they were saving the tires for the next stint, and the fact that it didn't make it just means it didn't make it, so it was kind of expected. Both McLarens were also out in Q1, and they said that it felt more normal to get out in Q1 than make it to any other Q. Q2, Lewis went out, which was really weird because George made it into Q3, and it's still weird to see Lewis not make it all the way into Q3, even though it's been a year and a half. In Q3, though, Charles fucked up and he landed in the wall, which is wild because he made the exact same mistake during free practice in the exact same place. And because there were only less than 2 minutes left in the session, it was over, which means the grid was locked in as it was, and it meant that everyone who was in the middle of a fast lap or about to start a fast lap was done, which gave us a really mixed grid, which was actually really interesting. There was a funny part in all of this, which was the moped part is always the funniest part to me, but Charles was getting a ride back to the paddock from one of the volunteers, and he was on the back of the bike. And he was literally sitting there like this the whole time, looking really grumpy. And it was his fault, and he acknowledged it. He was upset with himself, but it was really funny to see him. He looked very, he looked very pouty. His full body was pouting. It was a full body pout, if that's the thing. Another great part is that every time something goes wrong for Charles, we get the full force of his fan club, which includes, and the president of which is Max, who wasn't annoyed at all at Charles, even though theoretically Charles ended his chance at pole. He said he made some mistakes as well, and actually anyone who says that Checo got first by luck, Max was kind of messing up anyway, so it's a very good chance that Checo would have retained pole regardless. But yeah, Max really hyped Charles up, said he was a great racer and that he didn't actually mess up that badly. Everyone was messing up. It's not we can't blame Charles. He really is Charles' number one girl. He loves Charles. And it was so annoying because the commentators were saying all these things about Charles where they were like, Charles is really fast. He just doesn't know where the limit is until he hits something, which is a very aggressive thing to say about Charles. And Fred Vasseur actually agrees on that one because he came to Charles' defense most vehemently. He said, I think Charles was at the limit. In his first attempt, he set the best times in sectors 1 and 2. He was fighting for the pole, but it went as it went. Without a doubt, the accident is a shame because he had the pace to be on the front row. When you're fighting for the pole, you have to push, and you can't say he pushed too much. Last year, when he had a problem, people said he had to push. Now that he pushes, people say he pushes too much. That's okay. It's better in Fred's Frenchiness delivery, but I just love how strong the presence of Charles Leclerc's fan club is in the paddock. And I love that Fred defended him because people were coming at him pretty hard. He was coming at himself pretty hard. He said that he really messed up. This was all my fault, blah, 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 blah. And he's usually very hard on himself, even when 90% of the time it's not his fault. But anyway. Speaking of fan base, though, speaking of fan club, all of Miami is Checo's fan club. They are obsessed with him. It was deafening. Every time Checo's name was mentioned, anytime something happened with Checo, anytime he came on camera, the roar of the crowd was out of control. Also, very random, but the whole front row is Spanish speaking. And if anyone has seen History of the World Part 1, I saw a great meme where it was the front row and then it was no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. That's a very niche reference, so if you don't get it, it's fine. So the starting grid for the race is Checo on pole, followed by Fernando, Carlos, Kevin, Pierre, George, Charles, Esteban, Max, Valtteri, Alex, Nico, Lewis, Guan Yu, Nick, Lando, Yuki, Lance, Oscar, and Logan. All right. On to the race, and my standard PSA, I will not be going in chronological order today, but instead I'll be highlighting the best performances and key moments. So the start, two big-ish things happened at the start. First, Checo got a much better start than Fernando, so he was able to keep the lead. And there was also an incident way at the back of the grid, way back, where Logan had contact with Lando, causing damage to his own car, forcing him to come in for an early pit stop. He had to change his front wing, but it also pushed Lando back from 16th to 19th. Which is a shame, but 16th to 19th. Quick interlude before I continue on strategy, circumstances, tires, etc. So a couple of things to note about the track conditions to really help make sense of the meat of this race. So the surface is fresh as of 2 months ago, which makes it iffy in terms of driving because it's brand new and hasn't been driven on. Another thing that changed things up is that it rained on Saturday night, which made the track even more unpredictable and made it more challenging to drive. So the track only became good really halfway through the race. Also, we haven't gone through the full race, but I'm going to tell you now that there were no flags. There was one penalty and no incidents. There was some damage to cars, but not enough to get Stu in a tizzy, which is crazy considering the last few races we've had. But anyway, all of this combined flipped something in terms of strategy assumptions on its head. The track conditions meant that the general assumption that the medium tire would be the best turned out to be incorrect. The medium tire really struggled on the track, which meant that everyone that started on mediums, which it turned out was the majority of the grid, needed to pit much sooner than anyone who was on hards. In reverse, though, it did mean that they were, in theory, better off for the second half of the race, but that didn't necessarily end up working that way in their favor. So in the case of Max, for example, his strategy ended up benefiting him more. And before we get all riled up, Checo was not upset about it. It was a natural strategy call to put him on mediums when you're leading a race. You wouldn't put the leader onto hards because it takes longer to warm up, etc., and he needs to maintain his lead. B, the lack of incidents was also an issue because everyone was convinced that there was going to be at least one safety car and fueled accordingly, meaning that when there were no incidents or reasons to slow down, on one hand, the car was lighter, so it was faster. On the other hand, though, they had to really manage fuel levels because they needed to have enough fuel at the end of the race in case they were inspected. So that made things a bit more challenging in the second half of the race. And also as sort of a side note for anyone, this is not a strategy thing, but if anyone was confused, because I definitely was at one point, one thing I noticed during this race that I don't notice that often during other races was that there were a lot of radio messages along the lines of plan A -2 or plan B +5 or whatever. And what that means is that each plan indicates the planned lap time before a pit stop, and the plus or minus is like a certain number of laps to adjust the projected time. So like if they plan to pit in lap 20 and then they said plan A -2, that means that they want to pit lap 18 instead. So just as a little FYI, maybe everyone got that and it was just me, but just in case. So next I want to talk about Max's ascent. Before the race, Fernando predicted that Max would catch up to him in lap 25. Last time Fernando made that prediction, Max literally overtook him at the start of lap 25. This time, Fernando overshot a little because in literally 15 laps, Max was leading the race. Well, not leading the race, he was in P2, and then once Checo pitted, he overtook. So let's do a quick rundown of his overtakes. At the start, Max briefly dropped to 10th, but immediately went back to 9th, and then by lap 2, he was in P8. In lap 4, Charles and Kevin were battling it out in front of him. Charles overtakes Kevin, Kevin is fighting back, and as we're all focused on this little Haas-Ferrari battle, in literally one fell swoop, Max overtakes both Kevin and Charles into P6. It was glorious. It was also, no one expected it. He just zoomed past. And just as a random side, it's not random, it's relevant, but as a side note, Kevin did end up taking his position back from Charles just a few seconds later. Wasn't Charles's day. By lap 9, Max had overtaken George into P5. George tried. A for effort. He did not go down without a fight, but it was completely futile and everyone knew it. He had no chance. In lap 14, Max battles Carlos for P3, and Carlos puts up a better fight than George did, but is also pretty quickly overtaken by Max. And then in lap 15, Fernando is overtaken, and Max is in P2. Fernando kind of tried, but also like he didn't really try. He looked like he just couldn't be bothered. He's like, what's the point? Just go. And then when Checo pits in lap 21, Max takes the lead. Now, this time between Max taking the lead and his eventual pit stop is crucial because, and according to Christian, it is what sealed the deal for Max. So in the next 20 or so laps, between like lap 21 and lap 45, Max sets a pace that is significant enough so that when he does eventually pit for mediums, he is setting himself to be in the best condition possible to battle Checo for the win. And I will get into that battle after I get through everything that happened during the race. So some of the team struggles, or some of this teams that struggled. Red Bull was flying high, but a lot of people were doing significantly worse. Not yellow flag, incident, etc., worse, but worse. McLaren is like in a tragic state. Lando admitted that making it past Q1 is a fluke, like I said before, but like the pace, sometimes like they're worse in qualifying and they're better in the race. Not McLaren. McLaren just sucks overall. Oscar actually had a technical issue, so he was managing that the entire race, which would explain his position being towards the end of the grid. But then again, his teammate was like 2 spots ahead of him. So it's not like the technical issue actually was that much of a setback or relevant to performance. He would have been doing bad anyway. It literally just, the only thing it signifies is that Oscar had a much harder race because he had to manage this the entire time. And then Ferrari. Oh, Ferrari. So Charles did mess up yesterday. And yes, Carlos did end up getting the 1 penalty of the race for speeding in the pit lane. So he lost 5 seconds off his time, which pushed him to 5th instead of the 4th he was in. But like, there's only, or maybe he wasn't in 4th. Maybe he just kept 5th. Not actually sure, but there's only so much that we can blame the drivers for. The best way to sum this all up is literally the camera catching Charles and Carlos talking up through the race, looking sweaty and annoyed, clearly complaining to each other, and they're just like shaking their heads, looking so frustrated. They did look pretty, but they looked frustrated because it's obvious how irritating it is to drive a car that's so inconsistent. Like, errors aside, it's not an easy car to drive and it performs differently every time and it's just hard for them to manage. Next week is the Imola Grand Prix and it's going to be very tough to watch when we're in the heart of the Tifosi and just like hearing like an audible heartbreak. All right, next let's talk about more happy news. Fernando had a great race in that he went the full capability of the car, which for Sunday was P3. And clearly he was driving the full maximum of the car, and still it was easy for him. So he had like a lot of brain space left over to just like do other activities like strategize, watch the race, even as he's like going 200 miles an hour. One funny thing I thought was that everyone was raving about how strategic Fernando was while driving, and low-key we found out he messed up. He got on the radio at some point and was like, plan A minus 12, which now we know means that he wanted to pit 12 laps earlier than planned. But later we found out that the reason he apologized like 2 seconds later and all the engineers were laughing was because plan A minus 12 would have been like 4 laps before he said that. And Fernando was like, oopsies. So even geniuses mess up sometimes. But the truly iconic moment for me was when Fernando randomly gets on the radio and goes, that was a sick move by Lance. Like way up in turn 1. What position is he in now? And his engineers like clearly are laughing and are like, he's in P13. But like when Fernando was asked about it later, he was like confused that anyone even noticed. And he said there were big TV screens on the side of the track so he could watch the race as he drives, which is fair enough, but he's going 200 miles an hour. Like, you have to like really absorb everything that's happening in like half a second. But I just love how he's not only like racing his race, engineering his race, he's also being like a lovely mentor to Lance. I really wish they had direct communication with each other. I think it'd be funny. But speaking of Lance, who is my new favorite person and DJ Khaled's best friend, it was a bit sad to see Lance's race go the way it did, but honestly, it was sort of just like a combination of bad luck and bad moves. Like, qualifying, they used worse tires to save the better tires for later, and that didn't work out. Today, they started with the worst tire, and then by the time they switched, it was too late. Like, Lance started doing overtakes, but at that point, the race was basically over. So it just wasn't his day. But I still love Lance so much, and I can't explain it. I really hope it's not because he broke his wrists. I haven't subconsciously analyzed why I'm obsessed with Lance, but I am. All right, so let's head back to the battle between Max and Checo towards the end of the race. Max pits in lap 45 for fresh tires, and he has made such major headway before his pit stop that he comfortably lands back in P2, and basically his only job is to chase down Checo, which turns out to be a pretty quick job. Checo puts up a pretty good fight. Max attempts an overtake twice, and Checo's able to defend before he finally, like, has to let him pass, and Max just sails away. Checo was basically, like, 3 seconds behind Max by the time the race ended, but it really does go to show the state of the Red Bull that Fernando, who's, in theory, in the second best car on the grid, he was 15 seconds behind them both. So it just shows, like, how much better the Red Bull is compared to everyone else. What is interesting to note and to look out for in the future is that Christian said before the race that Checo's confidence is sky high. And it seemed like it might have been knocked down just a little by this. Not only because, like, nothing that happened was really anyone's fault but his own. He just didn't have the same pace as Max, which I feel like is a much easier defeat to accept. Like, when they're really angry, it's because it's something out of their control, but when it's their fault, they're like, I just couldn't do it. So I want to see how much this shakes him, because he's been so confident in his ability to win the championship. I want to see if he's able to carry that confidence into the next race, because I really think it's helping him. Like, the confidence is good. It's a little over the top, but it's good. Another thing that was interesting that someone said after the race was that Max's win this week wasn't because Max did anything different. It was because Checo wasn't the same. Max performs exactly the same every week. And it's really fully on Checo to see if he can match up or even surpass him. Max is so consistent and flawless in his execution that even when he's set back to P9 on a track where you virtually can't really overtake, even though there was more overtaking than expected, but like virtually you can't really overtake on this track, he did it in 14 laps, 10 laps faster than Fernando estimated. That's impressive. One funny thing that happened towards the end of the race was George, who was pretty firmly in P4, got on the radio and was like, who's that in front of Fernando? Are we that close to Perez? And his engineer goes, no, that's Fernando about to lap Logan. And George was like, oh, I was about to say. Like, Red Bull is so fast that George is shocked to even see Checo. Like, he was that confused by his ability to have Checo in his line of sight. I thought that was funny. So the ride to the cool down room is like in these decked out golf carts to look like cars. And for some reason, each driver gets their own. They can't share a golf cart, even though they're going to the exact same place from the exact same place. It's different than last year where Max had like a literal police escort through that tunnel. And they almost like knocked over Ginger Spice. Guess they changed things up a bit, but the cool down room was kind of cute. They made it look like a locker room and had like a helmet and Miami jerseys for Fernando, Max, and Checo with the number that they finished in on the back, which is actually a very speedy and impressive turnaround. But also, like, were they supposed to put on the jersey and the helmet? Were they supposed to take it out with them? Because they fully ignored it. Like, they just looked at it and like didn't even comment. They're like, oh, that's cute. Nothing. They gave zero fucks. They also collectively agreed that this race was better than last year. I think even Esteban during one of his interviews said that if he could go, that he could do the whole race again. He was not even tired. But anyway, back in the cool down room, they were watching replays from the race and they were watching all of Max's overtakes. And I think Fernando at one point was like, incredible. And Max jokes, you said lap 25 and I was watching my dash like, uh-oh. And Checo goes, what lap did he get you? And Max says lap 13 or 14. It was 15. But Fernando just shakes his head. He's like, it's a bit of a touchy spot for Fernando. Even though he called it. But then Checo asked to finish fourth, and Fernando says Russell, and both Max and Checo go, huh? So, excuse me. So as surprising as it was for George to potentially see a Red Bull in his line of sight, it was equally as shocking for Max and Checo that a Mercedes finished fourth, even though they haven't been that bad. I don't know why they were so shocked. Also, the podium, Fernando's celebrations are everything. He did like this little jig as he got the trophy, and then he tossed like the champagne bottle down to his engineers. And I just love this camaraderie that he brings. Whoa. Mike Crack, which by the way, you're obligated to say his full name every time you talk about him, but he said that Fernando really keeps them all on their toes, and like he's like laughing as he's saying it. So there's clearly never a dull moment with Fernando around. All right, so driver of the day. The official driver of the day was Max, which is wholly warranted. He actually did have an incredible race today and deserves all the praise. That double overtake on Charles and Kevin, amazing. But there are a couple of other people I'd like to shout out. Lewis, who was P13 and then went to P6. Wait, did he? He did. He also had a pretty cool double overtake on Valtteri and Esteban in one go. But my personal driver of the day is Yuki, who is driving what is arguably the shittiest car on the grid, and he still has managed to finish P10 in 2 races and P11 in the rest. And today he had some masterful overtakes, but for whatever reason, he was shown so little in this race, even though it was a very impressive climb from P17 to P11. And some great overtakes, particularly over Guan Yu. But basically, Yuki's like newfound discipline paired with his crazy like driving style, like has made him into like a powerhouse almost. Franz Tost went so far as to say that at this like the trajectory Yuki is on, he will be ready for Red Bull in 2025, which is a big statement. But like, look at this year. Yuki, who everyone was sure would fall apart without Gasly by his side, who everyone was sure would be just like drowned out by the elderly, experienced 25 abs on his stomach Nick DeVries. Like, Yuki did not take that lying down. I imagine, like, the way I imagine Yuki's off season is like a makeover montage set to the soundtrack of I'll Make a Man Out of You from Mulan. He like climbed that pole, but his pole was like just training in general. Like his own personal hell. So kudos to him. Daniel's trainer, Michael Italiano, was the best like investment Yuki has made. He forced Yuki to go into the desert. Yuki worked, Yuki got disciplined. Not to mention that Yuki hasn't let his time with Pierre go to waste. He's got like all the Riz these days, strutting around the paddock in cool clothes and like a backwards hat and like a little espresso. He's cool, he's consistent, he is the moment, and I personally am thrilled to see Yuki thrive like this. It's everything I could have hoped for. And the tick in the box for me is actually no one during the race. It's actually whoever wrote the copy for the driver's intros and whoever approved the whole thing in the first place. None of it was good. None of it. All right, so the results from the Miami Grand Prix are as follows. Max, Checo, Fernando, George, Carlos, Lewis, Charles, Pierre, Esteban, Kevin, Yuki, Lance, Valtteri, Alex, Nico, Guan Yu, Lando, Nick, Oscar, and Logan. And 0 DNFs. This is a 0, apparently. Zero DNFs. The standings are Max with 119 points, Checo with 105, Fernando with 75, Lewis 56, Carlos 44, George 40, Charles 34, Lance 27, Lando 10, and Pierre 8. And the rest are not worth mentioning. Also, the rookies have 0 points to score yet. Which, I don't know about Logan and what his deal is, but for me, the reason with Nick is very clear. It is because he has too many abs. No one should have like 50 abs on their stomach. And I'm pretty sure that's slowing him down. The Constructors' Championship is as follows. Red Bull with 224 points, Aston Martin with 102, Mercedes with 96, Ferrari with 78, McLaren and Alpine are tied with 14, Haas has 8, Alfa has 6, and AlphaTauri has 2, and Williams has 1. Okay, so that's it for the Miami Grand Prix. Next up is Imola. There are many car upgrades expected for that race, so let's hope everyone is able to catch up just a little to Red Bull, and potentially we'll get something more exciting consistently, like more fun, more overtakes, more anything. Until then, I guess make sure you subscribe, share with any potential boxes, and you can always DM me or email me with your thoughts because I love to hear all your box thoughts. Also, you help me keep me up to date because there's so much F1 news. I am overwhelmed and honestly miss out on like half of it. So DM me, email me, and follow at BoxBoxF1Pod on social to keep up between races. So see you soon. Box.